Divine Warp Tour, I say it was freedom, actually. It was kind of freedom. It was supposed to be like a party in your own backyard. Accessibility, that you wanted to come to there and either pick up a skateboard or pick up a guitar and start your own band, breaking down the barriers between the fans and the bands and the skaters, and that's really what I think we accomplished for a long time. No one understood what we were doing at that point. We knew what we were doing, but no one else did.
I'm Kevin Lyman from the Vans Warp Tour.
He's the owner of the Vans Warp Tour. He's not from the Vans Warp Tour. He's like the boss of the Warp Tour.
Kevin Lyman is doing a great job of keeping a bunch of punk rock musicians.
For the Mexican Fiesta today, I've been trying to, kind of how I relax. Once a week, I try to get on the grill. Here with Kevin Lyman.
Kevin Lyman's the dean.
Yeah, he's the nicest guy in the world, but he's
just scary. He looks through your soul.
I love it. That dude just likes to drink and fish and then just walk around Warp Tour watching everything.
Yeah.
That's all he does.
My name is Kevin Lyman, and I grew up in Southern California and gravitated to the punk rock scene in Los Angeles. And it was during that early 80s, we had to go into Hollywood to see these bands. So I started meeting the bands, and these artists had so much to say lyrically. They were speaking, to people's hearts, and you'd see people screaming, but it was also a very interesting time in Los Angeles. It was very violent. The punk rock scene was very violent. There was a lot of punk rock gangs that kind of controlled the scene, and a lot of violence. And I felt watching this and being in the middle of it, I was kind of the weird dude wearing Doc Martens, cut off overalls, had long hair down to here, that they let us run our shows. So we were kind of neutral territory to run the shows. But I was like, deep in my mind, I'm going, wait, these lyrics are so important, but if you're worried about getting your ass kicked, it's not a good thing. And I put that in the back of my mind. So that was there, and I just kept producing shows, and it was every night of the week, kind of cut my teeth producing shows in LA. 320 shows a year I was working. I really learned a lot about kind of branding then, and it was interesting in a world of growing up where it was like, fuck corporate America was like the saying. I started learning early on that, wait, we all supported companies in our own way. There's no way to avoid it. So if ultimately I could go figure out how to get some money to kind of have a good time with my friends and promote what I wanted to do, it wasn't going to be a bad career. We found ourselves in a situation where we were doing like 7 nights of the Ramones and 6 nights of Jane's Addiction. And I was asked to be the first stage manager of Lollapalooza in 1991. So as most people in the industry, most people start going on the road with bands, and that's, you go out with your friends on tour and everything. But I stayed home. I worked home, and I was working in the clubs, and I was invited to go on the first Lollapalooza. So got to go on the road for the first time on that tour, which was amazing. It was a breaking ground as a tour, but I started putting in my mind, and I don't know, like if I ever got a chance to do this myself, I would do things different. Then in 1995, I was sitting doing one of those events up at Snow Summit, and I heard someone mention the X Games, that the X Games were being formed. And I said, wow, this is going to change it all. This is going to change everything, because this stuff we did on the West Coast and some place like Florida and that was going to become like known to everyone outside. I was doing really cool shows. We did the Holiday Havoc and the Vision Skate Escape, where I had the Chili Peppers on top of the ramp for $250. Now their tickets are more than $250 for one ticket. But I said, oh, well, and I listened, and I was listening there, and I started putting all this in my mind, and I said, if we don't go do this ourselves, we're going to be working for someone else doing it. And I decided to throw it all out on the line, about 13 years of work. And I was driving home that day after telling some friends, I think it's time for us to do our own thing. And came home and started putting the mind to the first Warped Tour. I was a horrible skater and a horrible musician, but I knew how to talk on the phone. So we had a chance to do it ourselves. And we actually, put it together that first year on a shoestring, the Warped Tour. Yeah. But it was also it allowed me to put these thoughts together that I wanted to do things differently.
In 1995, music fans needed something new. Yeah, there were summer tours, but nothing that combined music, action sports, and the camaraderie of the early punk days.
It wasn't some people thought we were trying to duplicate what Lollapalooza or other people were doing. I go, no, we're reinventing it. And
then along came the Warped Tour, a punk rock summer camp on wheels that's become the longest running music festival in history. 9 stages, 24 bands, a vert ramp, cheap tickets, screaming fans, porta potties, and miles of tour buses.
You know, there's things you did for business in life, and then there's things you did from your heart. And Warped Tour was 90% really about a community. It really was. And 10% business. I guess the prime example of that was maybe when I got involved with Monster. People are willing to work with companies, but back then a lot of skepticism. And I said, one thing we will always do is keep the ticket price low. We'll use a majority of the money from this to make the show better and keep the ticket price low. So people started to warm up to that concept. I felt also myself was hard because I was the person that loaded everyone's trucks. I threw people off stage all night. I set up the dressing rooms. I did all that. So I was like the first kind of production person that kind of stepped out because we had tours that were created by, you know, Perry Farrell with Lollapalooza, John Popper for the Horde Festival, Sarah McLachlan with Lilith Fair, Ozzy with, and here I am, Kevin, the guy that threw people off stage all night, said, come along, let's be part of this together. You know, we went out and talking those brands and that kind of evolved as those brands evolved. And really that relationship was always the discussion with the brands and say, listen to them about what they were trying to get out of what we were doing. Me and my crew sitting there and going, okay, how can we bridge them into our world with making them accepted? So a company like Monster coming in, the original foundation of the idea with working with Monster came when it was Hanson's Energy before. And Monster was being formed, and I had gone down to Temecula. Hey, Kevin, come on down here. There's these guys that are jumping, doing amazing things on motorcycles. I think you'd be pretty stoked to see what they're doing. And I said, this could be really cool. And I also looked at it in a different way, too, because I really thought they could be organized to take out to county fairs. And I said, I'll go out and represent. We'll put you in state and fairs around. And Monster was starting, and think, you know, Mark had recognized and met some of them and started giving them small sponsorship deals. They said, you should talk to Mark about this. So we met, and we got together, and it didn't start off great, the conversation, because I'm like, Mark, you should sponsor. I'm going to bring these guys on the road with me. It was going to be great. And we'll put this team together, and we're going to go out on the road, and you're going to sponsor. He goes, why would I sponsor you? I've already got them. Why do I need to give you any money? And I said, well, I also have this great music. There's music and all these other things. So if you want access more than just a logo on a helmet, you got to get involved with us. And he said, well, here's my thing. I need that Monster logo everywhere. I want that Monster logo everywhere. And I want people to drink Monster. And Monster's great, but you can't drink it all day long on a hot day. So we went back and forth, and I said, would it be possible to put that water in that can? Because I can guarantee you that logo will be all over the tour. I said, you could put that logo, it'll be on guitar amps, it'll be on drums. All we need is waters. And I know Mark, being the great businessman, goes, oh, wow, all he wants is water? But that was important to me at that point because I had to buy water each day for the bands. And he said, I could pull that off. And that's how our relationship started. And they became the second longest running partner of that tour through the years. And it evolved with the water was so important to us. And then that kind of evolved. And then those cans that we started designing each year, incorporating the artwork and everything was really a great relationship because it was one of those things that when you had a partner that you could do multi-year deals with, and there wasn't a lot of discussion, and it was very easy, and it was a really cool partnership all those years. So this is the artwork from the 13th anniversary of the tour. It's called Lucky 13. Mark called me one day and said, hey, I'm wondering if you'd be interested in coming back and doing some water, doing the original tour water again. So I'm really stoked that we're sitting here right now, and I'm maybe going to open up the first can of the tour water relaunch. This is the deep well water, and I'm actually going to try some here and see if it feels as good as it did when it was 106 degrees in a parking lot for all those summers. Just as good. And then we decided that the great artwork that was from our 2010 tour, the Warped 2010 tour, would be the art for the sparkling deep well water.
Kevin Lyman should run for president. Instead of just being about the money, he's always been about doing things that are cool, I think, and making it cool for all the bands.
He handpicks these bands, and I think he's proven time and time again that he knows what he's doing,
He's invested a lot in the bands that have reinvested in him, It's like, it's a community kind of feeling with Kevin.
A lot of kids will come up and say, how'd you get on the Warped Tour and do this and that? And I'll tell them, it starts off with just meeting Kevin.
Big family getting back on the road, and that's what it's all about on Warped Tour.
There's a thing called the Kevin Says stage, and that is due to bands showing up and going, we're supposed to play that, and they're like, no, you're not. And they go, well, Kevin said. Kevin said, so he just made a stage called Kevin Says stage.
We give the kids a chance to show up in the morning. We listen to demo tapes. Some days, if I'm in a bad mood and I'm dealing with an agent or a manager that I'm really down, I reach in that big pile and just grab one. And the first kid I can get on the phone, I give him 5 days on the Warped Tour. And if as long as I still can do that and still have fun doing that, yeah, I think we could be talking about it.
Now I'm going to get to try one of those. Really excited about this one. We didn't have this on tour. Tastes like great sparkling water. The coolest thing about this product, also one for me, was early on, we're now seeing plastic, a single-use plastic is really an issue. You're never going to eliminate it touring, but we made it smaller. And then, of course, there's a business side of all this. So when Mark brought this up to me, I said, what'd be really cool? The royalty that you're going to give me on this can, we'll donate it to Music Cares to help future artists with what they need. And they'll get a nice check from Monster for this product. You're always going to have that kind of a rough year in 25 years. And 2017 was like probably everything that could potentially happen. We made it through, everything. But it started to come together in a different way. We had bands that were members were in their 60s. And we had bands with members in their late teens. And trying to keep the dynamics of that together, that people just live different lifestyles, was hard. So I was really working really hard. And when we would go to some of these cities originally, they were very skeptical about us coming to town. So we always tried to leave the city a little better. We try to do those canned food drives. We'd do all the philanthropic work we would do and leave it behind. But that day I was walking and there was all these parents sitting along the fence. They were sitting along this fence. And I said, well, and they go, oh, we're not letting our kids go to a punk rock show alone. You guys coming to our town. So I looked at them and I said, we got to give you a place. So that's where the reverse daycare center came from. You check your parents in, we'll watch them while you have a good time. But we never isolated those parents. I always put it right in the middle of the show because I think everyone didn't realize that these kids were creative. They loved art. They loved the nonprofits. I wanted those parents to see. And most of those parents were like what you would call trend-setting parents at first, the one who could drive the 5 kids that were 13, 14 years old that wanted to go to the show. And then they would go back into the community and say, wow, that was a good experience. And that was what it was ending it at 8:30 at night, ending it by sundown, so those kids could be picked up because their parents would be worried about them afterwards. So it was constantly trying to evolve it. But the reverse daycare center, and trust me, that's where we would put the original tour water in the daycare center for the parents. The music industry had changed because bands weren't selling CDs, and we always had this way to set up music, and we always navigated it, figure out how to make it work. But to be honest, on a personal level, it was very frustrating. So it was just getting hit from every side. So one night I was right after the tour, I brought a bunch of people in my backyard and saying I'd never asked people for advice on how to work this tour to keep it going. And I got the industry together. I would do these barbecues and they just couldn't, there was no creativity. It was the first time I said, I need some help maybe keeping this together. And there was nothing there. And it got in my mind that, you know what, 25 years, let's do this. Let's go out in 2018, kind of that farewell tour, I guess. And we had a wonderful summer. It was our second biggest summer ever. Everyone came out, the crowd got older. And then in 2019, I said, wouldn't it be cool to think about where to really wrap this up nicely? And couldn't have gone better. Atlantic City, kind of a grimy place where we started, a little grimy around the edges, but a perfect Warped Tour place, do it on the beach. I was inspired by Bill Graham up in San Francisco, who was a legendary promoter. So I decided to do a couple shows in San Francisco at his venue. And then we did our show at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the exhibit opened there and kind of wrapped it all up. It was really fun. I mean, it was a, you know, to think that we were able to do it for 25 years. And I literally got my Sprinter van at the end with my wife on the last day. And I said, I did everything I could possibly do with this project. Now it's someone else needs to start their own project and do it better than I did. I think it really was freedom. I think it was just, you know, it really was. And I think that's what attracted a lot of the bands early on. They heard how much freedom, what it was like to be on that tour. We pushed it right to the edge. And sometimes that freedom put a few people in jail because they pushed it over the edge. But we just went out and, you know, we did it. It was punk. You know, for me, there's no definition of punk rock, but living the life you want to live. This tour water, when we did it originally, no one had done it before. So it was the freedom to try something new. And that's what we did with this water early on. And it's nice to be able to come back and do it again. I think for those people that have been to the Warped Tour, it brings back memories like seeing a band or putting on the music that you relate to that great live show. Because it's the live show. It's like opening the can for a lot of people. Will bring that nostalgia back. And hopefully, like I say all the time, some kid will open the can and go, why is the Warped Tour around? It's time for me to start one better and do something else better than him.